We're up.
I'm all right. Yeah, feeling good. Had a good couple of training sessions in today and just been doing life admin. So, yeah, I'm ready to have a chat rather than type on a laptop all day. Yeah, I think, 2020 on a whole has been tough for everyone. I think the main thing I've tried to do is just kind of remain focused on the next go in hand, which would be W Series this year, in 2021. Ended up getting a job during lockdown doing van delivery work. So I was driving up and down to Scotland 2 or 3 times a week during the night just to A, get some money coming in, and B, also just try and kind of keep the country moving. So yeah, for me, maybe 2020 has been equal parts success to equal parts disappointment.
Yeah,
that way.
It's been a bit of a strange one, hasn't it? I think, to be fair, if you came out of it fighting and with a bit of success in your hands, then why not, eh? Because it's been certainly a very different one. Now, obviously, to have you on the show this evening, not everybody knows everybody in the world of motorsport, so if you had to give everybody an introduction to who you are and your background in motorsport, what would it be?
So my name's Abbie Eaton. I've raced for 18 years now. This year will actually be my 19th year. Started off in go-karts when I was young, moved through to GT racing, and some of my successes that I've had in racing led me to be asked to be the Grand Tour test driver. So get to work with Jeremy Clarkson, James Mayer, Richard Hammond, and get to play with all the nice cars they do as well. So yeah, I had a varied career. As I say, karting, GTs, done a bit of rallycross, did a bit of electric vehicle driving as well, and had my first experience of sim racing at the start of last year when we went into lockdown, and W Series, which was the championship I was going to race for, ended up doing a esports championship, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I was a big fan of all the different series that had their sort of virtual counterparts coming up, and it really did help keep everybody occupied, not just people like me that do sim racing, but obviously yourself as real racing drivers. You know, you still have to get that fixed, don't you, when you're not on the real circuit, but you have to get the virtual one as well. Do you think it's been a good comparison in ways, or do you think there's too many sort of drawbacks from the real motorsport in that effect?
I think there's certain aspects that it's useful to use sim racing, to practice being consistent, and, learning circuits is a huge thing that simulators are good for. Hence, I've got my own sim here. But I think certain things that you don't get the aspect of is, how a car feels underneath you properly. You haven't got the G-forces. Engine braking, you can't feel that happen in sim racing unless you're on some really, really high-end sims. So it's definitely supplementary as opposed to replacement for the real thing.
It's certainly got a few elements where it makes life a little bit easier. You don't have to pay for any damage to the car if you bin it, as I do quite a lot. Obviously, no worrying about annoying team managers or anything unless it's really high-end sort of esports stuff. But when it comes to the actual real world motorsport, what was it that first got you interested? What sort of got you hooked on the adrenaline and the wonderful world that is motorsport?
So my dad used to race. He started on bikes actually when he was about 16. Right. Did some speedway stuff, all that crazy stuff, and then moved into karts and did 250 national. Again, completely. You see the gearbox karts now go around some of the circuits that we race at, and you just think it is just mind-boggling the speeds and how dangerous it is. And then he moved into cars, and that's when I was born. And so basically I grew up around motorsport and grew up around the racetracks of the UK, and took a lot of pestering, probably 2 or 3 years of pestering before my dad's let me actually have a go myself. And then that was where it all kind of stemmed from, really.
And in terms of karting, obviously, like you say, massive adrenaline, and it is mind-boggling just the speed of it. I mean, I commentated on Kart Masters this year in August at PFI, and I mean, those boys in non-geared karts, they're scary enough around there. Is there any sort of particular fond memories that you have of karting? Because it's so brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the boys and the girls that are in any form of motorsport, it is adrenaline fix that you get from it, really.
Mm.
And PF was my home track, so I spent way, way too many laps around PF, and it was before they made the adjustments as well. And
All right.
it was so boring. It was my least favorite track, and it was the one I had to go to all the time. So, yeah, I mean, it was my first ever experience in a go-kart on an actual circuit was at PF, and I think probably a nice memory of that was that first time that I had to go, and I was just turned 10 years old, and it was my birthday is the 2nd of January, so I think it was the weekend after my birthday, so
Yeah.
early January, and it started snowing, and I was going down PF Main Straight, and there was sleet and snow coming on my visor, and I remember like wiping it with my glove, and my hands were freezing, and like got back in, and at the time we just had this little van, and it was me, my mum, and my dad just on this test day,
Yeah.
and I remember sitting in the back of the van like shivering, freezing cold, and I was like, "Can I go out again, Dad?" And I think my dad was like, "What have we done? What have we done?"
What you started here?
Yeah. So I think he probably did it on purpose to try and put me off, but yeah, it didn't work.
I was going to say that's one of the main things that I hear whenever I get the chance to speak to racing drivers. Everybody says that as much as you'd think it was so tiring and shattering going out and doing lap after lap, you get such a buzz from doing it because at the end of the day, you're doing what you love, you're doing what you want to do. You just want to keep turning laps because it is such a kick. And I mean, the new PFI layout, or obviously the more recent one anyway, doesn't feel new anymore. But
No.
the first sector there, the right, left, and then round the long left over the bridge, I just can't believe the speed that they do around there. I've done obviously rental karting. I've driven around Bookmore Park and seen Sodi RT8s, things like that. But when the senior X30 guys came out, it just scared the life out of me. It's just, I don't understand how anyone's got those sort of reactions. I mean, is there anything in particular that you did to sort of heighten those reactions, or did you feel that it just came naturally?
It's just exposing yourself to it. It's bumming seat time and just practicing. When I was in karting, I started off in cadets and then moved up into mini max and junior max. So you kind of always have that progression, and it's always kind of a bit of a step up each time.
Yeah.
I think probably if I'd have jumped from a cadet into like, a ICA or something like that, back in the day, then yeah, my head would have probably fallen off, and I would have had to have tried things to make sure my reactions were up to speed and stuff like that. But you always generally have a bit of a build up in karts and in cars, rather than throwing yourself in at the deep end.
Yeah, that's very true. And like you say, the steps up are very important because, I mean, as you then again explained, if you go from something a bit sort of not necessarily lower down, it's probably not the best way to say it, but something in a lower formula, for example, and then you go up to something that's really top end machinery, even in the karting world, like you say, it's just a whole different ball game of training. But when it comes to different vehicles, and obviously you've driven plenty of them, I mean, everybody obviously knowing you from being on the Grand Tour as well, the amazing selection of cars you get to drive there, what would you say is the most exciting thing you've done, whether it's like one event, just one experience? What sort of got to you the most? What made you really think, I love this?
It was my first experience in rallycross. So in 2019, there was a new championship set up called Titans RX.
Okay,
and it was basically the series was set up to kind of have the same performance that you'd get in the World Rallycross cars, but on a cheaper scale. And I got invited to go and do it. I'd never done any rallycross before. I'd never even driven a rallycross car or been on a rallycross track. And I went straight into a race weekend at Lyddon, and I was like, God, what's this going to be like? These cars, 550 brake, 4-wheel drive, hydraulic handbrake, sequential gearbox. It was a proper piece of kit. And from my first lap, I think even when I was like pulled away from the line, I was like, this is just awesome. And I absolutely loved it. And if I could go back to when I was a kid and try and like navigate my dad to do rallycross or get me into rallycross, I definitely would have, because it was just phenomenal. And the performance out of the cars as well was just outstanding. Like, I think it's 0 to 60 in like something stupid with the 4-wheel
like 2
drive.
seconds, isn't it? Or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like 2.3 or something like that. In the dry with launch control, and yeah, it just blew my mind.
And it's the fact that they can do things like that on dirt as well. I mean, the fact that they're not just road cars. You know, they'll go on a loose surface and they'll still handle as if they were. You know, you've got that sort of 4-wheel drive push no matter where you chuck the car, and they've always been exciting to watch. I did actually hear about Titans RX through Tom Brooks, who we obviously both know in different ways. He's commentated on it before, I believe, and I've seen a lot of stuff that he shared. But whenever I saw it, I thought, what are those cars? I was like squinting like at the screen thinking, what is that? Because they look quite different, don't they, to your usual World Rallycross cars?
Yeah, so it's basically a space frame chassis with different kind of body kits on it. So they had the Hyundai i30, Mercedes A-Class. What else? They have the Audi A1.
Yeah. They made that look ugly, I can tell you that. They certainly made that look strange.
Yeah, it was almost, with it being its first year, it was kind of like, right, let's just see how it goes. There's no point, liverying them up properly because as rallycross is, and we're trying to keep the budget down and stuff like that. So, it was kind of more of a toe in the water just to see how the championship went. And it was hugely successful. So they looked to do the second year, and then obviously coronavirus hit and put a stop to that. But I think this year, 2021, they're going to push for another year again, and
good.
Some development's gone into the cars, definitely on kind of visual aspects. So they'll look a little bit more racy, I think.
Yeah, a little bit beefier because, like I say, it just caught me off guard. I was watching it thinking, this is great, this. But then I was just really, the car nerd in me that I've had since I was really little was just looking at them thinking, I don't know what that is. Like, what is that? It was just one of those sort of racing phenomena that you see where you think, I can't even relate to what that car that used to be or what it's based on. But either way, like you say, the performance is mega and it's always exciting to watch. So it's totally understandable that that is one of the things that really excited you over your career. Now, during said career, well, I say that like it's over. It's barely begun, has it, really? Let's face it.
Well, I don't know about that. It's in process.
What has been your greatest achievement so far? We'll put the so far on the end of that because I know there's plenty to come.
I think probably getting recognised and having the opportunity as the Grand Tour test driver. I think that's obviously a massive success.
Yeah.
I grew up watching the boys on Top Gear, as we all did on the Sunday night. It's a bit of a routine, and to think that I actually have been able to work with them is something quite cool and quite special. But I think probably my most rewarding memory, and one that is going to be hard to kind of beat, is when I won the MX-5 Super Cup with my family-run team. So my dad built the car, engineered the car. My uncle was the team manager. Family friend Chris was number one mechanic, and mum was the bacon sandwich maker, which was the most important job.
Oh yeah.
Of the whole lot. And we ended up winning the championship, and that was my last time with a family run team. So something that I'll always hold really close to my heart, and something I'm really proud of doing with them and sharing it with the family as well.
Yeah, like you say, sharing that with the family as well makes it even more of a special moment, because it's not just like you've got a contract with somebody, like a third party essentially, and you having some of the closest people, probably the closest people you can have around you, going through that whole championship, winning it as well, an amazing achievement. I actually managed to get the opportunity to commentate on you in that Super Cup last year now, at Silverstone in National. That was,
so frustrating.
I know. I felt the pain from the commentary box. I was with Scott Woodwis, and it was, to be honest, the racing, everybody always says MX-5 racing is amazing, and that proved it, didn't it? Was that just the one-off return that you did, or were you back for the full season?
So I did the Donington Park round. So my sponsor, Clapham North MOT, so George Grant couldn't make the Donington Park race, so he said, we jump in and just have a go and keep the car going around the circuit, and said, of course I will. Jumped in there. That was my first time in an MX-5 in about 6 years, and had a lot of fun. I was in the top 3 again, jumped straight in, so I was really pleased with that. And then he said, look, I've got a spare car and I'd like you to continue and do the rest of the season with me. So Silverstone would have been the second round, and did I finish second twice? One of the races, we were really quick around there, which again I was chuffed about, and was equally clearly the quickest on track all weekend. But in one of the races when I was stuck behind Luke, there was a yellow flag on, like, there's only really two places you can overtake at Silverstone National, going into Maggots Beckett's and then into Brooklands when you can lunge people, and there was always a yellow flag there. And then I'd get a really good exit, and then I couldn't get past him anywhere. So yeah, it was frustrating because I wanted to bring home a number one pot for George to put in his workshop, but yeah, to be continued on that front.
Well, it was certainly amazing. I mean, I'd been told about it before, and obviously the package that it was there with as well. There was another MX-5 series using the older models, the Mark 1s, and they had to split that into 3 30-car grids, and it was mind-blowing how good the racing was. And I mean, coming from a sim racing background, obviously with iRacing, sort of chucking people in an MX-5 is the first thing they do. Yeah. Commentating on a lot of that and then seeing that the racing is just as exciting in real life was unbelievable. And I mean, you say, lunging at Brooklands, it was more of a sort of, how far can I go on the brakes here and just see if there's any doors to lean on the way in, because I couldn't believe half the moves that were getting done. But like, when you're in that sort of moment and you're just going for it, what is it that possesses you to think I can brake that late? Because you pull it off, and I don't know how, because half the race, they look like they're on the edge anyway. What goes through your mind to give you that confidence, do you think?
MX-5s are renowned for giving you a lot of feedback, and the balance of the cars is phenomenal as well. And the car that I was in, the Rob Boston racing car, Rob has been in MX-5s and he's been in various of the championships for many years, and he knows how to set a good car up. And the car just feels really nice underneath you, and you can feel when you're braking late into a corner, you can feel if you push it too much that the rear of the car is going to kind of unsettle and want to come round on you. So it's just, playing with it and just seeing what's too much and what's not enough. And, you hope that your bravery and your car setup and everything can allow you to be just that little bit later than the car you're trying to pass. But it's just, it's as much a mind game as it is, physically getting the most out of the cars.
Yeah, definitely, and mind games is certainly the thing around there. Like you say, there's only 2 places to pass at Silverstone really on the national layout, so you have to properly...
Lots of drafting.
Yeah, there was plenty of it. I mean, to be fair, half the time, you'd be tucked up behind somebody coming out of Luffield, go past the commentary box and down the straight, and you'd be in front of them by cops. It was the slipstream of those cars seems so strong. Like you said, with the feeling in the car, and obviously, you feel the car underneath you, you know how it's behaving. Coming back to the sim racing side of things, do you feel that is the only thing that sim racing misses out on if you're trying to use it as like a driver sort of training program or something?
Yeah, I think in terms of the feedback you get through the wheel, the force feedback now on some of them is amazing, and you can feel that through the steering wheel when the car starts to step out and so on. But a lot of it, the stimulus is different, so it's a lot of visual cues that you've got to get, and noises as well from the sim is really important to try and kind of deduce what it's about to do or what's going on. And I think that's something you have to work at if you're not, if you haven't come straight into sim stuff rather than from real world to sim. But I think there is definitely a lot of crossovers with other bits and bobs, but that was the thing that I struggled with, and I still struggle with the most on the sim is I don't spend enough time in it, but also just having to get my visual cues, knowing what they are and how to react and how to respond to them. So it's a tough gig is sim racing, and I think all the sim racers that are out there, I think fair play. They are wizards on the sims. So they do stuff that I can't do. Like when you just ask the question of how do you know you can brake so late? How do you get the confidence to do it? Well, on the sim, I'm like, no? Oh, no, I've hit some off, So as much as you can't understand us in the car, I can't understand, sim drivers.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be fair, because like you say, you rely on different senses to know what the car's doing, and it is just about adjusting your mindset to when you're going to have a moment and when you're not. When you can save it as well. I mean, iRacing has famously become known as ice racing recently because of the lack of grip, and you've got to properly get on it to save it, or sometimes just let go of the wheel and just think, oh, I've had an accident. But again, one of the benefits I mentioned earlier, you can push the limits and just press a button and go back to the pits. that's the way that you can test that again and again. If you're going out in the real car, you can't think, oh, I'll just crash it and just get a new one. But some people have the money to do that, but unfortunately we all don't.
No.
Obviously, here on the Sim Grid, we have the More Female Racer series, which has been running for nearly 2 full seasons now. Their finale is on Monday, which I unfortunately can't commentate on, but I hope all the ladies have a fantastic time with that. What importance do you feel that series like that have in the likes of the transgender and female racing communities within sim racing? Because we know, obviously, that these communities were getting, obviously, a lot more sort of visibility for them now, and obviously the Sim Grid doing a mega push to that. But what sort of importance do you feel that series like that have?
I think it's important to have series like that in everything. In for example, W Series, completely new phenomenon, and they're trying to do it all for the right reasons. And with the Sim Grid having the championship setup as well, I think it's only going to do positive things and raise profile for the female sim racers that are out there, and that kick backsides when they're out on the sims as well. So from what I've seen, it looks like a really competitive championship as well, and there's a few rivalries going on, I've noticed as well, and a few tensions arising. So it looks like an exciting thing to be a part of.
And there's certainly, like you say, it has real world aspects to it as well, like you mentioned with the rivalries and so on, and it gives a good avenue for people to obviously get involved in motorsport. And at the end of the day, it can always lead to more things, because another door that I believe sim racing has opened has been that door to real life racing as well. I mean, you've seen it probably yourself as well, with there are people that started in sim racing that now get real life drives, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think there's a massive push for esports to kind of have that transition across. And motorsport is renowned for being stupidly expensive and very difficult to access. So you can get together and save up and get a half decent kind of sim setup at home, and you put the effort in and you give it your all, and actually you can be extremely successful on the sim, and you get noticed. There's many Formula One teams now that obviously a lot of their stuff is sim based, so they're looking for those drivers that can understand how setups affect a car, how to set things up, how a car will respond differently, how you need to change your driving style to get the most out of it. And sim drivers are just being utilized more and more, so now's the chance to kind of make the most of the opportunities that are arising, and the money involved as well. God, the money involved in sim racing is huge. I wish I was better at it.
Same, trust me.
I need some tips. Someone help me.
I was going to say there's a reason I'm a commentator and not a driver, flipping heck. But yeah, some of the talent at the top end, and like you say, the prize funds that go are just scary. I think the Porsche Esports Super Cup on iRacing this year is 200 grand, and obviously the Sim Grid, they're doing 20 grand prize pot for the World Cup that they've got coming up as well, which everyone should definitely keep an eye out for. It is really, really mega. It's pretty scary as well at the same time, but it can only be a good thing for sim racing. Now, going forward, if obviously to sort of help female drivers come through the ranks in motorsport, as you have yourself, what would be the one bit of advice that you would give to somebody coming through the ranks?
I think probably just persevere with it. Motorsport is difficult. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And
very true.
No matter how good you are as a driver, and you might be able to jump in any car and kind of be up in the top 3, but unfortunately a lot of it comes down to budget and having the finances behind you to be able to access these championships and be in front of the right people and in the right paddocks and so on. So you get a lot of knockbacks and a lot of no's on your quest to find the funding and the budget and the support to do what you want to do. And I find it very, very, very tough at times to kind of see, why am I doing this? Why am I still chasing this dream effectively? And I think the main thing is not to lose sight of why you're doing it. I've raced in championships that people would give their right arm for, and I've been fairly grumpy throughout the season because I'm not where I want to be because of lack of funds, not allowing perhaps the best or enough decent tires or the best equipment or the ability to test beforehand. And you've got to enjoy it. The main thing is to enjoy it and to have fun, and as long as you keep that in the front of your mind, and the no's that you might get, each no, you're closer to perhaps getting a yes. So just view it like that and just stick at it and stick with it and remember the good memories along the way.
Yeah, so that's a good point as well about the budget side of things. Like you say, it can unfortunately control things a bit too much sometimes. I've seen a few tweets about it today, actually, with one of the Formula 2 announcements. People are thinking, why are these drivers in? And, everyone's saying, well, it's money.
Cash monies.
Yeah,
yep.
It's just money, unfortunately. But, yeah, like you say, there's so many... Sometimes there are a lot of knockbacks, and the positives that you've got to draw from that. That's the thing, isn't it? It's just positivity and pushing forward. Obviously, we were talking to Charlie Martin last week. She said very similar in that, there were so many things that can stack up against you in that, because it's a very difficult field to stand out in, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you need to just have that drive, pardon the pun, to just go for it, don't you?
Yeah, and I think maybe look for your kind of unique selling points as well. Back when I started 18 years ago, gosh, that sounds really old. A couple of years ago when I started, females in motorsport wasn't a particularly common thing, and successful females in motorsport wasn't either. So I could kind of use that to my advantage and kind of, find a few opportunities here and there. And, I've been lucky enough with the Grand Tour to kind of have that lift of exposure, and that's given me opportunities to have guest drives and things as well. So,
yeah.
Each door will lead to something else. And if a door shuts, forget about it. You've done it. You've ticked that. Now look for your next thing to focus on. And if something you've really, really worked for doesn't come off, obviously it's going to be a bit of a hit, and it's going to be tough. But think it's not happened for a reason. Now I need to look at what else I need to do to get to the end goal.
Yeah, and on the point there that once you tick something off and then move on, I've seen so many situations before where somebody will get something good that's going on, but sometimes when you hold on to it for too long, when there's another opportunity, just at the risk of maybe just upsetting one of the people involved in the previous venture, let's say, you can sort of hold your career back, can't you? If you're looking for that progression, it's a bit cutthroat sometimes, isn't it? The way you need to go about it.
Yeah, and I think don't burn bridges as much as you can. You thank people for opportunities you've had, and you explain, look, this is time for me to take the next step, and this is where I want to be. And as any kind of elite athlete or a sports person that's dedicated to their sport, you have to be selfish at times. And motorsport takes up a lot of everything, and you have to sacrifice a lot of things to to get to where you want to be. And I've sacrificed a lot over the years. My mum and dad have, and we wouldn't have it any other way, because it's what we live and thrive off.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's such a physical sport that, like you say, so much has to go into it, not just on like a preparation side of people around you, or having the time to do things. It's the training, the actual being in a location to do it as well. And you have to get used to the car. If you're going to do a season in a new car, you have to spend some time getting used to it, don't you? How that behaves, because while you can develop that knack in your head of, I know what it's going to do if I feel this, or I know what that corner's doing on that corner, every car is so different on a racing level as well. I mean, people think road cars are obviously different to one another, as you found out, obviously, as well. But race cars, even in similar classes, for example, so if you go for, obviously, the beautiful Maserati GT4 car that we saw on the thumbnail, if you hopped out of that into another GT4 car, there'd be a humongous difference physically, wouldn't there, in terms of the demand on you?
Yeah, so some cars might be a little bit heavier, or their weight might be distributed differently. So some cars might be a little bit sharper at the front end, so it's a bit more responsive at the front. If it's more responsive at the front, guarantee that the rear is going to be a little bit more tail happy. And equally, if you've got the weight, for example, with the Jag I-Pace, the electric vehicle I was in, most of the weight of that car is underneath you, and it's spread out completely because the batteries are all on the floor.
Yeah.
So you haven't got any kind of front weight to get the front to turn, and equally you haven't got any at the back to get it to squat and drive out at the corners. So every single car you jump in is completely different. And the main thing that will help you get better is getting your bum in the seat and driving the thing. And that is the hardest thing to kind of secure and to do because of money. For example, this year for me with W Series, I've never I've never raced single seaters before in my entire career. I hadn't driven one ever until last year or year before. Now,
I keep doing that.
Yeah, I know. So W Series this year is going to be an extremely steep learning curve for me, and hopefully I'm going to get a little bit of testing beforehand. We've got the 5 days at Valencia that W Series are putting on, which is fantastic, but I'm going to be learning on the job, and it is going to be the toughest thing I've ever done. And you'll see progression through the year, I hope. But yeah, the first few races, I'm going to be pretty shattered at the end of it. But it's all about learning.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, the progression will definitely come. I mean, we see it in sim racing and we see it in real life motorsport as well. And obviously, with that being your sort of first focus this season, it's going to be very, very exciting to see. And I'm sure everybody, including myself, look forward to it. Now, we do have questions from the community and or chat. You've actually just answered one without knowing it from Grand Prix Grandstand, who was the first person to send us a question on Twitter, saying W Series for 2021. Seeing how Holbrook struggled despite successes in tin top racing, how much single-seater running have you been able to get ahead of the season?
0. So what have I done? So before the W Series assessment in 2019, I managed to do a couple of days in a British F3 just to feel what it's like, and it was so polar opposite of anything I've ever done. So struggled physically. GT cars are physical to a degree, especially when you're doing endurance races, but my racing was predominantly sprint races, and it was a bit of a kick up the bum to think, right, I really need to start making sure I'm physically strong enough to drive these things. So I did the 2 days there, and then at the W Series assessment, we had 3 days of kind of morning sessions in the car, and that's it. So yeah.
So it's going to be learning on the job a little bit, but still, like I said before, very exciting to see how you get on that. It should be an interesting one from your aspect as well. It'd be good to hear about that over the course of the year and see what you make of different things developing, which would be good. Now,
you'll see me be grumpy and then get probably a little bit less grumpy as the year goes on.
Depends on the results as well, of course, as we all know. But we have Zlatan, who's actually asked 2 parts of this, one of which is a very, I imagine, a shorter answer than the other. The first bit is, what sims have you tried?
So my first ever sim that I went on was the sim at iZone, and I'm trying to think what was on it. It was actually when I was going to Australia to do the V8 supercars, so it was in the I guess the GT or saloon car rig with the sequential box and so on. Amazing setup. Yeah, really impressed with that. The more lifelike it can be, the better, because it's more kind of what I'm used to. So tried iZone stuff. W Series have got simulators that they use as well. And I love them to pieces. They're really, really good. They give you really good feedback, really good screens. Can't remember, Cool Performance Sims, I think.
Didn't they,
that brand of sim?
Didn't they have one at Autosport about 2 years ago? Yeah,
I think on their launch they had it. Yeah.
I was wearing a horrendous bright blue blazer and managed to have a go on that at the time, and I could barely move my arms enough because the blazer was holding my shoulders back. That's what I blamed it on anyway. But I was
That's a racing driver excuse.
Yeah, I was absolutely terrible at it, but. There was loads of others having a go, and it was on direct drive as well. It was a really hefty direct drive wheel, and it was nice because you get to events like Autosport, and obviously they have to tone them down so people don't get hurt. There's no public liability insurance worries about that, but they had it turned all the way up, and it was great. And that was my first experience of a direct drive wheel. And like you say, it's when they have something more sturdy like that, it does just add that little bit more to a sim, doesn't it? Because it does get you that bit close to the real thing.
Yeah, it's just a bit more realistic, and it requires a little bit more kind of physical endurance out of you as well. So really, really love the W Series sims. Had to go on a sim in Australia which had a VR headset as well. So bit strange, but you forget about it, and that is really immersive when you have the VR headset on. I want to get one for this, just to really immerse yourself in it. And then my sim setup that I've got here, so I have the Simicube Ultimate wheelbase and the Husingveld Ultimate pedals as well. So really lucky having the 2 partners there that have given me that to use. And it's just perfect for training and learning. 6 out of 8 new tracks that I'm going to do this year.
Fair play.
Yeah,
Fair
and
play.
that's it. I think that's the sims that I've been on.
Good stuff. Zlatan also asked, how many years do you plan to compete in W Series? And if you do well in said series, are there any plans for stepping up into more powerful formulas if possible?
I think realistically, I'm looking at maybe 2 or 3 years in W Series, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to learn this year. So the main aim for this year is just to make it through to 2022.
Yeah.
And then 2022 onwards, we'll see what we can do. If I made a success of it, we'll see what happens. But in terms of kind of stepping up perhaps to F2 and F1, I think I'm a bit past that now age-wise. And, single seaters has never really been my goal, really. It's always been tin tops and sprint racing.
Fair play. Fair play. Alex Stead, I'm not sure this was a question. He just put them cars always breaking down. Not sure. Don't know whether that was a reference to anything. Chris Ivy has put an interesting one in because we mentioned this before, actually, about the money. He's put, with racers losing out to big money, for example, ILOT missing a year because of dollar sign Mazepin, do you see this as fair?
It's not fair, no, but unfortunately that's the real world that we live in. Nothing's fair. Everything revolves around money, and motorsport is probably the worst sport, or one of the worst sports for that. And I'll link back to what I said before about the best advice I can give is just to persevere and stick with it.
Yeah.
Callum Ilott is a fantastic driver, and I'm 100% certain he will get his time, and he'll make a success of it when he does. But motorsport again is a business. It needs the money coming in to be able to do what it does. But yeah, it's not fair, unfortunately, and that's how it is.
It is indeed. It has been a shame to see because, I mean, in the last few years alone, series like Formula 2 has been more in the public eye. So obviously everybody gets this sort of taste of the talent that is then going to get promoted sort of naturally to Formula 1, don't they? Because we get these amazing races that they get going on. I'm a massive fan of Alex Jack's commentary as well, of course, but having that in your face and then knowing who could be in Formula 1 the next year, when you see the actual announcements, especially this year, there's been a lot of it where people go, what? But that is just down to the money, isn't it, unfortunately? Because we all have the dream team, don't we, of who we would want. You sit there going, I'd like to see this person in that car next year, or I reckon that driver would go well with that one. But it never pans out the way you plan, really, does it? Because you never know what the financial implications are behind the scenes.
Exactly, and I think it's a lot of kind of not what you know, it's who you know as well.
Oh yeah, true.
And there's a lot of politics involved in motorsport as well, so it's not so easy to predict what's going to happen. But usually the ones with the talent and with a bit of financial backing behind them will eventually get to where they deserve to be.
Yeah, and I have big fingers crossed for Callum Ilott as well, because I'm a very, very big fan of his, so fingers crossed that he does get up there. Before we move on to the YouTube chat questions, I do have a question from my good friend Jack Galley, who is a massive fan of the Grand Tour, and he's asked the question that you've probably been asked a billion times, Abbie, I won't lie. What is it like to work with the boys? We've all grown up watching them. What is it like? What sort of involvement did you have with them?
So mainly my stuff was setting the lap times around the track. So we would do that most of the time away from the boys and their filming. So it would be, maybe a week of filming where we would smash the cars out. Oh, smash the cars, smash the lap times out in the cars and get that done and out the way. But on the occasion that I've been lucky enough to do the challenges with them and accompany them to some amazing places, we all have a laugh. It's one kind of big family, really, production family that we go away together, travel together. It's long days involved in filming.
Yeah.
You're up at the crack of dawn and you're working until fairly late as well, and then up again early the next day. So a lot of trust, a lot of respect goes on between everyone. A lot of the team that were originally with the boys from Top Gear moved with them to the Grand Tour as well. So, a lot of long relationships still going there, which is nice.
Yeah.
When I came into it, obviously it was, fairly late down the line, and I got welcomed in with open arms. Everyone was really supportive, really helpful. Even with my racing endeavours away from it, I always get a lot of support from everyone involved, from Jeremy and James and Richard as well. So yeah, it was just a fantastic experience, and something that I'm super chuffed to be a part of.
And do you have a favourite of the three?
I do, but I can't tell you.
I'll have to find out afterwards.
Yeah, all right.
No, it's all good. Right then, on to the YouTube chat questions then. Digital Car Culture says, what are your plans for sim racing? Do you have your eyes set on any targets within the sim racing world in 2021?
I haven't really, mainly because I'm so busy away from the sim. And for me to get anywhere respectable time and pace wise on a sim, I have to spend a lot of time at it. It's not something I can just jump on and do. So yeah, maybe the few odd races here and there. Mainly I'm going to be using it, as I mentioned earlier, just to learn circuits. So some of the girls, Alice Powell, Sarah Moore, Jessica Hawkins and we sometimes go on and have a little bit of a fun race together and just have a laugh. I think there's a lot of times where we maybe put a bit of pressure on ourselves, especially on the sim as well, when we did the W Series Esports stuff, and it almost took the fun out of it a little bit, because we didn't have the actual race season, and you don't want people to think that your sim racing reflects what you're actually capable of in real life, and a lot of us are very hard on ourselves. So I think it's just all about keeping it fun and just learning where we're going.
Yeah, that's it. Like you say, using it as like a trading tool to learn circuits, and I mean even just the characteristics of circuits. With how accurate some tracks are now in different sims. They do a lot of laser scanning, and you get every single little bump and tarmac change, and even how the curbs behave. Some games from years and years ago, you'd have the same curb just copy and pasted everywhere, so you'd know how the entire game would be. But when you go to somewhere such as on Assetto Corsa Competizione, you could have one curb at Spa be different to a curb at the Hungaroring, just in terms of height, how wide it is, how much you can take. Those little details are really what make the difference, aren't they? Rather than just learning corner by corner, like whether you're going right or left next, it's just getting those details into your mind, isn't it, of how the car behaves on the brakes when it's going maybe slightly downhill in comparison to a corner that's like off camber or uphill. It's very, very fine-tuned, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's important to take sim circuits with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Don't go when you have your first experience at the track that you've only learned on the sim. Don't go like gung-ho into the first corner, because guarantee it's not going to be quite the same.
No, can't press escape.
Maybe 90% there, but in terms of the relief of the circuit and kind of ups and downs and bank corners and where the camber drops off and stuff like that, and even going into this some of the trees at Alton Park, for example. I know the sim companies now, they try and make it so that it is relative and it is realistic to like have wet leaves on the ground and stuff like that. But until you're actually there in real life driving the thing, things can be completely different. I know my first time at Spa, I learnt it on the sim before, and I went there, and my first time going up through Rouge, so I came out the pits and just kind of coasted up it, and the G-forces, I was like, wow, this is insane. And it's much more of a steep incline than what the sim actually really gives you.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation recently with a good friend of mine, Alex Sedgwick, who's raced in Euro NASCAR, about the G-forces when you're going uphill, because he recently did an ARCA test at Daytona, and I was asking him about it because he does loads of oval racing in the sim and gets used to tracks on there. But he said that when you're actually there at Daytona on the banking flat out in an ARCA car, he says you're getting pushed into the seat that much that you can't strain your eyes hard enough to look up and like look at the windscreen as where you're going, because of the angle of it as well. You don't actually see any of the sky. It's like it. I mean, me and my brother, who I've noticed has done a comment that we'll get to in a minute, we got the chance to go out in a GT4 Porsche at Donington a few weeks ago, and it was my first ever time out in a real race car and on a circuit. And I just couldn't, like, I noticed points where you're going up to like McLean's at the top of the hill, and my head is against the window, like I'm trying to strain my neck to get my head off the window, and I can't like I can't strain my eyes hard enough to look where I'm going. How long does it take to get used to that, do you think?
I don't really know, to be honest, because I've been lucky enough to do it since I was a kid. I never really had that thing of, God, my eyes aren't keeping up here. It's just, that's what I had, and I had to deal with it, and it kind of became normal. But
must be my lazy eye.
I think when you jump into a car that's maybe a lot quicker than what you used to, it's not I don't think you don't strain your eyes to keep up or look to where you're going. If you're doing that, I think you need to move your head more.
Yeah.
Your eyes move within what they're capable of moving, and it's actually, you've got to move your head a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's what I find with coaching novices, is when you get into a car, you'll be turning, or they'll be turning into a corner with hardly any steering lock on, and they're looking directly straight ahead through the windscreen, and they're like trying to lean over like this to look round the windscreen. And I'm like, there's a window here. Look through the window like that. And naturally, when they look where they're going, their hands follow their eyes. So it's probably just a combination of that and then being able for your eyes to kind of keep up with where you're going. That's the easiest way to solve that, is look further ahead. So don't look at where you are just in front of on the track. If it's obviously not a blind corner, look across the track and look to where you're going to end up, and you should always be a couple of steps ahead of where you are.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. Like I say, it's just getting used to it for me. I could not believe it. It was an amazing experience, obviously, but being the passenger, I think, may not have helped, because when you're in control of the car, I imagine it's very different, because you know exactly where you're going to put the car and how it's going to behave and so on.
And you've got one of these to hold on to.
Very true. Rather than me hanging onto the roll cage for dear life and pressing my feet into the footwell as hard as I could when I thought he wasn't going to brake. But yeah, that's another thing. Brakes, don't get me onto that. I headbutted the dashboard. We've got another question from the Mew, who's a good fan of, and he seems to follow me from every stream I do. So hi, mate. Which series would you love to race in most in real life? He says, I'm a bit late to the party, so I may have missed this. Sorry.
Probably World Rallycross. I'm sticking with my Rallycross.
Yeah, I was going to say, not a surprising answer after earlier, but it makes sense because it's just bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Digital Car Culture has got a couple of questions in, actually. He says, Abbie, what would be your dream combo car and track to practice on alone?
Bathurst V8 Supercar.
I like that. Big fan. Yeah, makes sense. I was watching footage the other day, actually, of good old Brock nailing it down the mountain, most of the time on 3, even 2 wheels, and it's just, it looks so exhilarating. Have you driven around there before?
I haven't, no. It's on my bucket list. I nearly did it one year when I was out there in October, but yeah, it didn't happen. But my dad's got a Holden Commodore from the 80s, so he imported it across from Australia and basically restored it all. So stripped it all down, built it all back up, and it is a Brock replica, so it's got the 83 Bathurst livery on it.
Yes.
So I'm lucky enough to drive that around the UK circuits. So we did Silverstone Classic in it, and it's a big old beast. Yeah,
indeed. Well, you never know. Fingers crossed. One day you could get that over to Bathurst itself and take it up.
I'd drive the real one. If I'm going to be in Bathurst, I'm going to drive the real one.
Yeah, fair play. Fair play. Got to go the whole hog on it, yeah? Got to go the whole hog on it. Digital Car Culture, again, says, does Abbie have any hobbies away from cars and racing?
Do you know what? Someone asked me the other day, what do you do like to relax? And I was like, I don't know, actually. What do I do? Away from cars and motorsport, I like sport in general, to be honest. So I like to go rock climbing, again, just because it helps with fitness. I do enjoy training, so I do a lot of kind of strength training. I've got a bike at home as well, so I try to rack up a few miles on that. I like going outside, like being outdoors. I ski both snow and water, mountain biking as well, which I need to do more of. What else do I do? Yeah. There's a few there for you.
I was going to say, it's a good list. It sounds a lot more healthy than my list of hobbies, which mainly involves sitting at this desk and getting fat. To be fair, there is another one from Digital Car Culture, actually. There it is. He says, the Grand Tour must have been super fun. Any behind-the-scenes shenanigans you can tell us about?
So there was one incident that happened when they were basically going up to a toll road. So they had the barrier that goes up and down and stuff. And when you film these things, you'll have a convoy with, probably like 10 cars in it. So you'll have like a tracking car or 2 tracking cars. You'd have a camera car. You'd have a car with the data guys in it, so that they're the ones that download everything. There's loads of people involved. And obviously you'll have the star cars, which Jeremy will be in, and Richard and James.
Yeah.
And on this occasion, they had the cars cameras hooked up in the cars, and the boys were like laid, apparently, like, having a sleep in the back of the car while they had a driver to drive them through or whatever. And one of the camera guys had gone to like reset something up, and he was like striding past all the cars, going up to like the toll booth to get back in his car. And he's like marching, super like manly, blah 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 blah. And this barrier basically came down, like almost hit him in the head. He must have been centimeters away from it, and he's like, oh god, and it came down like that. And Jeremy saw it happen, and they all had walkie-talkies to each other, and he's on the walkie-talkie and he's like, did any of you guys see that? And like Richard was like, no, what's happened? And he's like, the guy was striding manfully all the way up, and the barrier came down, almost knocked him off his perch, and like they were all just cracking up laughing. Thankfully no one got injured, but it was really, really funny, and the cameras all captured this happening as well. So
love it.
Yeah, so just silly stuff like that.
Someone's got that somewhere to then poke fun at him forever about that one.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's what I mean from an outside perspective. I'm sure a lot of people agree with me that whenever we see any of the whole sort of when anybody's linked up with radios, that when they're all in different places but able to talk about the same thing going on, it is bound to be hilarious. So I can imagine there's 1,000,000,001 different things that we could probably get lost in for a long time that had gone on. It's certainly an amazing thing to have been involved in, I'm sure. Let's see. P.S. Stone. Now, the Maserati that we've seen in the thumbnail, he says, have you tried said Maserati in Assetto Corsa Competizione?
I haven't actually, no. I have got Assetto Corsa on here, which my other half Jess uses, and she swears by it and prefers that to all the other sim programs. So yeah, I'll have to get it fired up and have a go in it. Is it any good? Why the question? Do you enjoy it? Do you not like it? Tell me why.
Yeah, well, I'll wait for Pierre to come back. But in the meantime, the Mew has also said, so just how much faster, I'm assuming on average, are you than all of the Stigs? Because obviously you are.
Way faster.
We know
like
that.
at least 10 seconds a lap.
So do you reckon on the old circuit you would have gone sub 1 minute then?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, Nick 4 has said, question, now that Abbie is all set up with a sim, can we persuade her to join us for Season 3 of more female races? W Series commitments permitting, of course.
If you want someone to fire everyone off accidentally because she's so rubbish, then yeah, I'm more than happy to.
Well, there you go, Nick 4, if you need a teammate. to clear the path in the first stint, let's say. There you go. My brother has asked a question that only a minimal amount of people in the chat will get, but he says, what are you doing on the 14th of March? Do you fancy an endurance race in the Volkswagen Jetta on iRacing?
14th of March, let's have a look.
Because I run a series called the British Boring Car Championship, and it's based on the old Super Tourers, but with the Volkswagen Jetta TDI.
The old Super Tourers? Goodness, I might be in. It's Mother's Day. You can't sit on the simulator all day for Mother's Day. Come on.
It's a
Actually, I am supposed to be testing something on that day.
A Jetta.
Yeah.
There you go,
so,
Matt.
Yeah,
never mind.
You're going to have to decline, unfortunately. But thank you for the offer.
That's all good. All good. There you go. Well, by the look of it, that seems to be all we have in terms of questions on here. Other than, I will end with probably... Oh, actually, Pierre's just replied and said, it's awesome, but hard to master in ACC. Very oversteery and drifty.
That sounds fun. To be honest, the Maserati in real life, it was probably quite similar. I mean, it was quite a big beast in comparison to the competitors it was up against. When I did it, it was mainly Ginettas and other kind of nimble things, whereas the Maserati was quick in a straight line, but it was heavy and it was a bit of a lump to get around the corners. But yeah, when you put your foot down, it certainly got up and went pretty quick.
We've just had 2 more come in, which we'll finish off with. The Mew has said, so Abbie, are you streaming or do you plan on streaming?
I have got Twitch set up, which I do stream occasionally on it. I think I'll probably start again a little bit more as I'm learning some of the circuits. I might go on and stream a bit, and you guys can all laugh at me learning and give me some tips as well. So yeah, I can't remember. I think it's Abbie Eaton 44 is my Twitch handle.
There you go, everybody. Well, oh, hang on. There's even more coming in now. Sorry. We've got Niak Nipples saying, would you prefer to have shorter hair for under your helmet?
No, you don't notice it. So you tie it back in kind of a low ponytail and you tuck it down your race suit, so you don't kind of feel it under your helmet. In terms of helmet hair, yeah, it's a nightmare having long hair, but never going to catch me with short hair.
And my brother said George Russell or Lewis Hamilton.
George, all the way.
Yeah, there you go. And we had the very first question last week when we spoke to Charlie Martin. I'll sort of round out with that one because it's a very difficult one in all fairness. It may take a while to sort. Mackey's or Burger King?
Mackey's.
Yeah.
All the way. But I quite like Burger King chips.
That's a good point actually, because sometimes the Mackey's ones are a little bit soggy.
Burger King is way overpriced. It's so expensive,
especially in the services.
Yeah, at McDonald's you can still get like a half healthy salad if you want one.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Well, Abbie, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Is there any sort of final words or anything that you want to give everybody before we wrap up?
No, I think just thank you for having me. If anyone's got any other questions that you've not been able to get in or anything, find me on social media, send me a message, and I'll try and get back to you as well. But yeah, other than that, thanks for the support. Keep supporting me through this year. Don't lose faith in me. I will get there eventually. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Smashing stuff. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Abbie, thank you very much. You're an absolute star, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in W Series this year. As for now, I've been Chaz Draycott. This has been the Sim Grid. Thank you very much for your time again, Abbie. We'll see you all very soon.